All right, it's right at 7 o'clock, so we'll go and get started. Just a reminder to everyone that the session is being recorded and it'll be posted later this evening for you to go back and look at should you have any questions or if you miss it, if you're not able to attend. A couple notes before we get started. So, this is the last week of the course. The course will end at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. That is the last minute I can take any assignment submitted. So this assignment you're working on now and any past due assignments that you would like to turn in late, or if there's any past assignment you would like to give another shot at, fix your mistakes and submit it to be graded again. Everything has to be turned in by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. I cannot accept anything after that. So please take heed. Okay. So what we're going to do today, I'm really just going to go over an example that's kind of like your assignment. Actually, it's really like your assignment, but it's not exactly like your assignment. But it should give you enough information and enough to go on to really, really help you in completing your final assignment. So, and as I go through it, what you'll see is I'll also be covering a lot of the material from the past 2 weeks just by doing this example. Okay. And if at any point you want to ask a question or have me pause and explain something more, then just you can either put it in the chat box and I'll probably see it if it's in the chat box, or you can just turn on your mic and speak up for a second if you would like for me to stop at a particular example and further explain it. Okay, so for your assignment, what you have to do is you're working on a media rental system, right? So you have some media, you have some ebooks, some, I think, DVDs or CDs. What was the other one? Yeah, it's movies, music, and books, right? That's what it boils down to. You have those different kinds of media. And you also have to make a manager for the media that keeps track of all of your books, all of your music, all of your movies. Is it rented out? Is it not rented out? And things like that. It also has to be able to load the media from a file. That's very important in your assignment. And then to top it off in your assignment, you have to create an interface to interact with it. Now, the assignment does say, the interface can either be, command line driven, just like we've done previous assignments where, you print out, select 1 to do this, select 2 to do this, select 3 to do this, and then let the user type it on the keyboard. That's fine if you want to use that for your user interface. You can also make a graphical user interface, a GUI, in order to interact with your system. What I'm going to do for my example, I'm going to make a GUI just like it's asking you to make in your assignment. And really, if you kind of follow along with the GUI that I make, it should work pretty well for your assignment also. But it's up to you to decide whether you want a graphical user interface or just command line driven. But for the example I'm going with the GUI option. Okay. So that's your assignment, right? This media rental system, ebooks, music CDs, DVDs, et cetera, right? What I'm going to do for my example is I'm going to simulate, say, a car lot, a sales car lot, right? Where you go and buy cars. So what I'll have cars. I'll have some electric cars. I'll have some gas cars. I will have a car manager that manages all my cars, keeps track of all my cars, allows me to sell my cars, allows me to list out my cars. Oops, don't want that to go to sleep. And allows me to load my cars from a file. I'll also make the GUI in order to interact with that. So that's what I'm gonna do for my example. And you should be able to see fairly well how it kind of maps over to what your assignment is. So, kind of if you go off my example as a baseline, I think it'll help you a long way towards completing your assignment. Okay, so let's get started. So actually, the first thing I'm going to do with my example, I'm going to go ahead and make the GUI first. I'm going to make my user interface. I just find that's a little bit easier if I make my GUI, and then, you know, let's say if your GUI has a button, whenever you click the button, you want it to do something, right? So whenever I get to that point where I want it to do something, that's when I'll start implementing my code for, you know, buying and selling cars and listing cars and so on and so forth. So let's start with my GUI. Well, I said I'm going to make a graphical user interface. So we always start with a JFrame, right? A JFrame is, you know, the window, right? So start by making a JFrame. We're going to set the default close operation that, you know, it exits the program. Let's make a size for it. Let's just say it's that big. Let's set a position on my screen. Set location, be at 200, 100. And then we'll show it, right? Set visible true. All right. So that right there is just going to make my initial window, right? Let's run it. And there you go. I get my initial window. You know, it has that title, cars, which I specified right there. If I close it, it's going to exit the application. There's the size of it, 512 pixels by 256 pixels. The initial location was somewhere like right here or so, right? That's at this location, 200, 100. And the set visible makes it visible. And there you go. So we have our initial window. Okay. Now, the way the user interface is described for your assignment, it talks about making a menu, right? And menu is just like these buttons right here I have on my IDE, right? This menu bar right here, like the first item is a file. And if I click on file, you know, it gives me all these other options, right? If I click on edit, it gives me all these options. If I click on view, all these options, and so on and so forth. This is what the menu bar is. Now we're going to make one of those for our program. And you make it like this. You have what we call a J menu bar. What the menu bar. It's just a new menu bar, just like that. That's our menu bar. Okay. Now that is the entire bar, right? All of these things together make this one menu bar. Now we need to make the individual items on here. For example, we need to make the file, we need to make the edit, and we need to make the view if we were making this one. But for our program, and just like in your homework, in your assignment example, there's only one single item. We call it with a J menu. And inside here, you put the text that you want that menu to be. And this will all make sense in a minute. So you can think of this menu as this thing that says file, this thing that says edit, this thing that says view, this thing that says navigate. It is not yet all of the options underneath it. It's just kind of think of it like the main heading. That's what this J menu is. It's just one of these headings. The menu bar is all of the headings. All right. So what we have to do, we have to add our menu to the menu bar. So we do menu bar dot add our menu to it. So now this single item is part of the menu bar. We also need to put the menu bar on the frame, because if we run it right now, there's still no menu bar, nothing to click on here, right? Because we haven't added it to the frame yet. So let's add it to the frame. And we do that with frame.set J menu bar. And that's the menu bar. So let's make some comments here. We're going to create the window, create a menu bar, create a single menu, add the menu to the bar, and this is add the bar to the window. And then all this down here is really just part of showing the window, right? So now let's run it. So we make the window, we make the menu bar, we make a menu item. We make one single menu, and we're calling it menu. We're going to add the menu to the bar. We're going to add the menu bar to the frame. So let's run it. And now you see we do have a menu bar, and we have this one single item called menu, right? Oops. With this menu, where did it go? There it is. With this menu being this J menu, right? But right now there's nothing underneath it yet, but we're getting ready to add those other things, okay? So let's close this out. So we want to create some menu items. The menu items are these subcategories underneath the main header. So for file, this closed project is a menu item, right? So for our example, we're going to have several menu items. We're going to have one for load, make a new menu item, and then whatever text we want it to be. If I can spell, we have load. What else do we want? For example, we're going to be able, we want to load from a file, we want to find, and we want to sell a car. This is for our example. We want to load cars from a file. That's what that menu item will do. We want to find a car in our list of cars, and then we want to be able to sell a car. So we're going to create those menu items, and we have to add them to this menu. So we'll have this menu.add the load. We'll add the find, and we'll add the sell. Now let's take a look at it and see what happens when we run it. There we go. So we got our window, we got our menu, and now when we click it, we have these sub options under here, right? We have the load, the find, and the sell that we defined right here. Oops. We define them right there. We made a menu item load, and it has the text load, and we add it to the menu. Same thing with the find and the sell. And when we look at it, underneath our menu, we have the load, the find, and the sell. Our GUI is really almost done. So let's imagine if we click load, we probably want it to load from a file, right? So if we click load right now, nothing's happening. If I click find, nothing happens. If I click sell, nothing happens. And why is that? Well, it's just like when you had buttons in your previous assignments. You have to tell Java what to do when you click on it. So with this load, we can add an action listener, a new action listener, and then in this action performed, user clicked load. So whatever we want the program to execute when they click load, we're going to do it right there. The same thing with the find, add action listener, user clicked find, and the same thing with sell, add action listener, new action listener, the user clicked sell. Just so that we know it's doing the right thing, let's just do like a little pop-up box here that says they clicked load. So we know that that code is working, okay? You said load, they click, was this find? And if they click the sell, we want it to show a message that says they clicked sell, right? So if they click the sell button, it's going to execute this code, and we're just going to show a message dialog that says they clicked sell. Same thing for find, same thing for load. Let's run it. As you can notice, anytime we make really any kind of substantial change, we're going ahead and running the program again. That way, it allows us to easily test out each incremental little change we make on the way. A mistake that's easy to make is, trying to code up the entire assignment before you ever try to run it one time. That's really kind of a mistake. You want to constantly be running it and testing it as you are coding it. Don't wait until the very end to try to run it, because you'll probably find out you made a lot of mistakes along the way that's hard to go back and correct if you wait until the end. All right, so here we are running it. So now if we click menu and load, it gives us the pop-up box that says we clicked load. Good, that works. Same thing with find. We clicked find, okay. And the same thing with sell, we clicked sell. All right, this is looking good so far. So I have my window, I have my menus. Whenever I click something on my menu, it does what it's supposed to do, right? The same thing with find, the same thing with sell. So that's 90% of the work for our GUI. Okay, so we got a large part of our GUI done. Let's take a step back and let's start looking at the other things we need for our car sales lot, right? Which is pretty analogous to what your media rental system is for your assignment. So let's think about selling cars. So first we need a car class that is our car, right? So we're going to keep these short and sweet because you've done a lot with making classes and making subclasses and then extending other classes and things like that. So we're going to keep the contents of these fairly short, but enough to get the point across, right? So for a car, let's think about the variables that belong in a car. Well, let's have a string that represents whatever ID we want to assign to the car. We'll have, say the car's make. We'll have the car's model. We'll just have make model kind of as one variable. Private string, we'll say we want the color. Private int is the miles. And that's enough. Oh, let's have the price. The float, the price of the car. Remember, this is a car sales lot. So these are things that we need to represent the class that accurately describes a car. Of course, in real life, there's a lot more, maybe what kind of radio it has in it. Does it have leather seats? Does it have a satellite radio, et cetera, et cetera. In real life, there's a whole lot more variables that describe a car, right? But we're going to stop here to keep our class, relatively simple. So these are going to be our variables for a car. Let's make our constructor public car, and you need to give the class all the information in order to initialize these variables. So we want to give it everything it needs to know. Make model, string color, int miles, and float price. And then we want to set them to our internal variables. This ID is equal to the passed in ID. Make model, color, miles, price. There we go. So that's our basic car right there. It has all these variables. And for our constructor, we pass in all of the variables, and then we just set them equal to our internal variables. Okay, that's all we're doing for the car so far. But we can think of our car as like the generic car. It's not very specific. We're going to make two subclasses of it. We're going to make a gas car and we're going to make an electric car. That's kind of analogous to your assignment where, this may be your media class and you have to make subclasses of it for, like an ebook, a music CD, and a movie DVD. I think those are the three classes you need for your assignment. So, but instead of media, for my example, we're going to have a car as the base class, and we're going to have two subclasses. One will be gas car and one will be electric car. So let's go ahead and make the gas car first. A gas car. So our gas car will extend our car. And what other variables does it need? Well, for gas car, let's say the only other thing we want to know is how many gallons of gas it has. All right. Let's make the constructor. There we go. So it's going to be just about like the car constructor. Remember, this is the gas car constructor. So we're going to call the car's constructor. Remember, when we extend a class, this super right here is calling the constructor of this super class. So again, when we look at the car constructor, it needs the ID, make, model, color, miles, and price. So when we call that constructor, we're giving it the ID, make, model, color, miles, and price. But for the gas car, we have one more thing, right? We have this gallons, right? So we need to give it as a parameter, and then we need to save it here as passed in. So that's our gas car. Our gas car extends a car. It has all the variables that a car has, but it also has this gallons variable. This is our gas car constructor. It takes all those parameters. It calls the car constructor with like this, and then, its own new variable of gallons, it saves the incoming parameter. So that's a gas car. Let's make an electric car. Electric car. It will also extend car. Its variable will be, say, how much charge is on the battery. We're just going to call it charge. When you do the constructor, well, just like the gas car, when it extends a car, the electric car takes all of these parameters and it calls the car constructor like this. But just like the gas car also needed the gallons as an additional parameter, we also need an additional parameter of what the charge is, right? And then we save it just like this. So really, the electric car and the gas car look very similar, except for the gas car has some gallons, and then, it still has the gas car constructor. It calls the car constructor, and then it saves the gallons. The electric car, instead of gallons, it has a charge. How much is the battery charged up? It has its own constructor. It calls the car constructor, and then it also saves that charge variable. And that's all there is to the class hierarchy as far as our cars go. Now, we probably will be implementing more methods, but right now we don't know what the additional methods are that it needs, right? It could have a bunch of different methods, but so far we don't know what those methods need to be. So right now we're going to leave it as is. And once we get to a point that we identify it needs additional methods, we'll make those methods at that time. All right, so that's our car base class and our electric car and gas car subclasses. All right, now let's make a car manager to manage our cars, right? So the variables. So one of the things it needs to do, it needs to know all of our cars. It needs to maintain a list of our cars. There are several ways you could do this. You could do just a raw array. I would not recommend doing that method. I would recommend the method that I'm getting ready to show you, but you could use a raw array, and you could use a queue, you could use a set. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I would recommend the way I'm about to show you. So we want to have a list of cars, just like this. What this is saying, we should all know what private means so far. But list means just like it sounds, it's going to be a list of cars. It's not a car itself, but it is a list of all the cars that we have. And for our car manager, you can think about this as, all the cars that are on the car lot. We have these, less than and greater than signs. And inside of here, you're going to put the Java type that is in that list. So the type of object we want to store in the list is a car. If you put something like, say, a float here, then that means this list would have floating point numbers in it. If you would put integer here, it means this list would contain integers. But we want our list to contain cars. So we say we have a list, and this is the type of object that is in the list. There are cars in this list. And of course, that's the name of the list. That's a variable name, right? So what you may be thinking, and I've got some email questions on this, is why do we use car here? Why don't we use electric car, right? Or why don't we use gas car? Well, the reason we don't use gas car is because a gas car is not an electric car. An electric car is not a gas car. So if we say our list contains gas cars, that means we can't put any electric cars in it. Likewise, if we put electric car here, that means we can put electric cars in the list, but we can't put gas cars in the list. But we want one list to have all the cars. You may be saying, why don't we do this? We'll have a list for gas cars and a list for electric cars, say G cars and E cars. Have two separate lists. Technically, that would work. Technically, Java will not stop you from doing that. And so, if you were adding an electric car, you would just put it in that list. If you were adding a gas car, you would just put it in that list. Technically, that would work, but that's very, very bad practice to do in Java. Well, really any programming language. That's kind of bad practice to have two separate lists that really represent the same thing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a list of just car. And this will let us put electric cars and gas cars into the one list. And why is that? It's because electric car extends car. That means electric car, it is a car. It is a car with more stuff, either more variables or more methods or something like that. But at the end of the day, an electric car is a car. Same way, a gas car is a car. So when we have our car manager, when we have our list of cars, that's why a gas car or an electric car can be in that list, because a gas car is a car, an electric car is a car. So that's why you can put both of them in this one single list. All right, so our car manager, it will have a list of cars that we're trying to sell, right? I think that's the only variable we need right now. Let's make our constructor, expel, car manager. Oops, of course, that's public. So we want to create our list. So have our list of cars is a new array list. Okay. And this list and this array list thing, this is really something you should have learned from CMIS 141, I believe. And there's actually a section in one of the modules in our class that kind of goes back and revisits the material on this list and array list. So I'm not going to go over those in too much detail. You should have picked that up in your previous lower level Java class, but it's also covered in the course material. Should you need to go back and review it. And of course, if you have a question on it, just ask me or email me a question about it. But there we go. So we have our list of cars. We created our list of cars. So what's some other things that we have to do for our assignment? We have to load them from a file. We have to update it. We have to be able to add new media. We have to find all the media, and we have to rent media, right? Well, for our example, we're going to load cars from file. We'll have a method that does that. We'll have a way to add new cars. We want to find all cars, and we want to sell a car, right? So let's make some methods that does these things. So load cars from a file, we'll just call that load from file. All right. Add new cars, we'll say public void add car. And there are some parameters we're going to need. but we'll add them when we figure out that we need them. All right, find all cars. So if we're going to find some cars, we need to return whoever asks us, whatever piece of code asks us to find the cars, we need to tell them what cars we found. So we'll give them back a list of cars. Find cars and sell a car. Sell car, right? This would be public. All right, so that's what we have so far. So we want a method to load cars from a file. We want a method to add a car to our list of cars. We want a method to find some cars. And then we want to have a method to sell a car. Okay. So now we need to do up the code to actually do this, right? So let's think about loading from a file. What are the parameters that we need to load from a file? What do we think that is? Well, which file do we want to load from, right? Do I want to load from, abcd.txt file? Do I want to load from 12345.dat file? What file am I loading from? So as a parameter, it needs to know what is the file name that we want to load from, right? Okay, so let's think about how we can load from a file. And reading and writing to and from a file was covered in your modules. But let's go ahead and do it for our example here. Let's open the file. Let's read the cars from the file, and let's save those cars in our list. So kind of what we need to do is open the file, read in all the cars, and save them to our list. Then we need to close the file, right? So let's start by opening a file so we can read from it. Well, to read from a file, really the easiest way, in my opinion, is to make a buffered reader. And you make it like this. A buffered reader is a new buffered reader, new file reader, and then the file name. That's right. Yep. Handle exception. Under exception, exceptions were covered in your material. So we'll just say it throws a new exception. There we go. Exceptions were covered in your modules. Not we'll talk about too much, but you can ask if you need more clarification. All right, so what we're doing here, we're actually opening the file. We're making a new file reader to that file name. We're going to wrap it in a buffered reader, and this buffered reader is what we're going to use to actually read the file. Okay, and we'll do it like this. We want to do while. No, we want to read an entire line out of the file, read line, and while that line does not equal null, do something with the line. Now here is where you have some decisions to make. You need to think about what is the format of your file going to be? What information needs to be in the file so that you can read a car from the file? What needs to be in there? Let's do it like this. Let's go ahead and make a file. And let's think about what needs to be in it. CMIS 242. Let's say I have this file called cars.txt, right? So let's look at our electric car. Where'd it go? Oh, not that one. There we go. Here's our file. So here's our electric car, right? So our electric car, it has a charge, but since it's a car, it also has all this information, right? So a car has an ID, it has a make, model, it has a color, it has a miles, and it has a price, right? So all of that information needs to be in a file so that when we read the file, we're able to successfully create this car. So let's think about it like this. First, we need to put the ID in there. Let's say for this car, the ID is ABC. Now you need to think of a way that you're going to separate each, say, variable from each other. I'm going to use a semicolon. All right, I'm going to use a semicolon, and you'll see where that becomes useful here in a little bit. But say that we put in the ID, semicolon, make model. Let's just say it's a Toyota. The color, red. The miles, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the price is 2323.23. You know, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. But if it's an electric car, it also needs the charge, right? A charge as a float. Let's say it's at 0.75% charge. All right. Let's say we have 2 electric cars. QWE, it's going to be a Ford. It's going to be green. Its miles are 3,568. Its cost is 34.34, and its charge is 55%, right? So we have 2 electric cars, right? Well, let's make a gas car now. Let's have a gas car inside of our car's file. So for a gas car, we also need the ID, right? Let's do WER for the ID. It's going to be a Jeep. It's going to be white. The mileage is 5678. The price is 5656.56. And you know, after the price for a gas car, we need the integer that is the gallons, right? So it's not a float anymore. It's an integer that says, say it has 12 gallons, right? Let's make one more gas car, make a different ID. Let's also say it's a Jeep, except this one is orange. It has 8970 miles. The price is 67. And it has 15 gallons instead of 12, right? So let's say we have 4 cars in our file. You know, we decided this one was going to be an electric car. This is an electric car. This is a gas car. And this is a gas car. But now the question is, you know, if you didn't know that, you know, if let's say you did not make this file, and hint, your program didn't make the file. So if you did not make this file, how do you know which one is gas and how do you know which one is electric? So whenever you read this file in, and when you're making a car, how do you know to make this an electric car? How do you know to make this an electric car? How do you know to make this a gas car? And how do you know to make this a gas car? Actually, let's add one more. Let's add one more electric. What's an electric car? Say Chevy. Not red, I'm gonna say it's blue. That many miles. You know, that price, and it's electric, so it's got that charge. You know, just a bunch of 9s. So what we have electric, gas, electric, right? But how does, if you didn't make this file, if we didn't just make this file together, how do we know that? How do we know this is electric? How do we know this is electric? How do we know these are gas? How do we know this is electric? The thing is, we don't. And that means your program doesn't know which one is electric and which one is gas. We need a way to tell it which one is electric and which one is gas. And we're going to do it like this. At the beginning of each line, we're going to tell it which ones are electric and which ones are gas. This is an electric car. This one is electric, and then these 2 are gas, right? So now we have 5 cars in here, and we really have all the information we need to know in order to recreate an electric or gas car. We know what type of car it is, electric or gas. We know its ID. We know its make/model. We know its color. We know its miles. We know its price. And we know For an electric car, we know it's charge, and for a gas car, we know it's gallons, right? So this is our file. So we'll have this file open as we're working on this. Kind of make it small right down here in the corner. Let's minimize that so we can show our file at the same time. Let's put it right there. There we go. So that's our file. Okay. So let's go back to where we're doing our load from a file. So this opens the file, the buffer reader. Now this is going to read one line at a time. Do something with the line. Right now, let's just print out what the line is so that we can see it's working and it actually reads our file. And then let's close the file with br.close. Okay, so this is going to be our load from file. Let's put some kind of return here so we're able to compile it, and we'll get to those functions. But right now, what this load from file is going to do, it's going to open the file. It's going to read one line at a time. And right now, I'm just going to print the line out. All right. So let's make a car manager and load from a file. Let's go back to our GUI. Let's have a class variable. Excuse me. Yep. Let's have a variable here. That's our car manager. Car manager. A new car manager. All right. So we made a new car manager. And here, if we click the load button, we're going to load from a file. But what is the file name we want to load from? Well, let's do this other GUI thing here called a JFile chooser. JFile chooser. A new JFile chooser. It's really as easy as this. And I'll explain it to you here in a second. Get selected, show open dialog, null equals approve. And 1 second, and I'll show you what all these mean after I get it typed in. Get selected file, toString. There we go. Load from file. Try catch. There we go. Actually, let's put all this in the try catch. Make it cleaner. You all should know what the try catch does by now. Catch exception e dot print stack trace. Sure. All right. So what a JFile chooser does, think about if you just have like Notepad or something like that open, and whenever you click save, or when you download a file, and you have to select where you want to save it to, right? Well, that little dialog that allows you to go through all your folders and files and find a specific file, that's what this is going to show to us. That's what a JFile chooser does. So a JFile chooser just makes one of those file selection GUIs. And then we show it with this JFile chooser.show open dialog that shows us all the files that we can select. And then what we have to do, we have to say if that is equal to the approve option. What that is saying is if we actually select a file to load, then this is what's going to happen. Let's say they start going through the JFile chooser and they don't actually pick a file, then it's going to be something else. Let's just say system.out.println, you didn't select a file. All right. So let's go through it. Let's use the load button. When we use the load button, it's going to make the JFile chooser and show it to us. And then if we actually pick a file, it's going to do our car manager load from file. And this right here just gets the file name that we selected. Okay. But if we didn't select a file, it's going to print out you didn't select a file. So let's run it and let's see if it works so far. There it compiles. There we go. There's a menu. Let's hit menu load. This is our J file chooser. It just popped up right here. So if I do not select a file, let's just say I click cancel, then you see, it just told us you didn't select the file. When you're doing your assignment, maybe you want to do something better than that. Maybe you want to have like a little pop-up box that says they didn't select the file. That's up to you. Let's go through now and load and actually select the file. Let's find that cars.txt I made right there. Let's select that. And as you can see now, what it's done, oops, I made a mistake. This is why it's good to test often. It's actually reading from the file forever, and it's reading the same one. Why is that? I made a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake, right? Let's go back to our car manager, load from file. So we read the first line in the file, and then we're saying, while it's not null, then we're going to print it out. Well, this read the first line and it worked, but now we need to read the next line, right? So after we print out that line, we want to read the next line. So we got to read line again to read the next line. Now let's run it. There we go, do menu load. Let's select our cars.txt file, and there you go. So what it did, it loaded the file, it read one line at a time, and it printed out each line one line at a time. Okay, so now we have read in all the cars, but now we need to figure out, well, how do I convert this line, which is really a string, how do we convert that into a car? Well, that's where these semicolons come in handy. You don't have to use a semicolon. You can use whatever you want. You could use a space. You could use a period. You could use whatever you wanted to use. It's up to you. I use semicolon. I like semicolons. So what we need to do, we need to take this individual line. This whole thing is one string. We need to break it apart into the different pieces. We need to break it apart into electric, ABC, Toyota, red, etc., etc. We need to break it into the separate pieces. All right. So here we need to do something from the line. We can make an array of tokens. Is the line.split, and we tell it what to split on, like this right here. So what has this done? So it'll take this single line and it will give back to us an array of tokens. Tokens is just a variable name. But what I mean by tokens is this electric is the first token. This ABC is the second token. This Toyota is the third token. So what we can do here is, first we need to know, is it an electric car or a gas car? So what we can do, we can say if the tokens at 0, because arrays are 0 based, meaning this is token 0, token 1, token 2, token 3, so on and so forth. If that first token is electric, I want to load as electric car. Else, if this token is equal to gas, then we want to load as a gas car. Okay. So we know this needs to be an electric car. Let's make an electric car. Have an electric car. Electric car. It's going to be a new electric car. And what does it need to know? It needs to know the ID, the make, model, the color, the miles, the price, and the charge, right? But we now have those in our tokens array. So what is the ID? The ID is tokens at index 1, right? This is tokens index 0, tokens index 1 is the ID. So we'll have tokens at index 1, that's the ID. What's next? It needs the make model. That's tokens at index 2. Tokens at index 2. What does it need? It needs the color. That's tokens at index 3. It needs the miles. Here's where we have to be careful. So all these tokens are strings, but this miles needs to be an integer. Now, we've seen in previous assignments how to convert a string to an integer. It's like this, integer.parse int of tokens, was it tokens 4? Why is it 4? Because our miles are at tokens 4. Token 0, token 1, token 2, token 3, and token 4. That's our miles. So we're going to convert that token string into an integer. Okay. What we have next, we need the price. The same thing, except now it is a float.parse of tokens, way up to tokens 5. And then we need the charge, which is the last token, token 6. It's also a float. Parse float, tokens 6. And there you go. We have made an electric car. We read this single line from the file. We noticed that the first token was electric. That means it's an electric car. So we make an electric car with all of those parameters representing the rest of the values in that file. Likewise, we can do almost the same exact thing for a gas car. Load a gas car. So instead of electric car, it's actually going to be a gas car. Gas car. Oops. Say gas car. I need to be able to spell correctly. There we go. It's not an electric car. It's a new gas car. It's almost the same as the ID, the make, the model, the color, the miles, the price. But instead of float charge, you know, for a gas car, it's int gallons. So it's going to be integer dot parse int, and that'll give us the gallons. So that's the electric, that's reading in the electric car, that's reading in the gas car. And now we need to add them to our list of cars. So we made this electric car, and we're going to find our list of cars and add the electric car to our list of cars. After we make our gas car, we're going to add that gas car to the list of cars. Okay. And that's all there is to the loading from the file. So we open the file, we read the first line, and if it's not null, then we're going to break it apart into separate tokens with this semicolon being the separator, and you can change that to whatever you want. If the first token, you know, here's our file. If the first token of index 0 is electric, then we're going to make an electric car. If it's gas, then we're going to make a gas car. These tokens are the rest of these values here. And so we just pass them as parameters to the constructor for those cars. And then we made the car, so we add it to our list of cars. So that is load. We need to make sure this works right, right? We got to make sure this works right. Right now, I'm 99% sure this works right, but even I make mistakes from time to time. So let's figure out how we can execute this and make sure it's working right. Okay. So let's in our car manager, let's have a way to say, let's make the toString method, right? Remember, toString is usually what we can do to be able to see what is in there. So let's override the toString method. So for the car manager, we're just going to have it print out all the cars. So we'll say for car in cars, let's have a string S and start off being blank. And then we'll have S plus equals whatever the car toString is. And then we'll add a new line. And then we'll return that S for a car manager. Simple, but let's use this to help test our load method. All right, so let's go back to main. So here, here's where we did our JFile chooser. and then we did our load from file. But now let's just print out our car manager toString. So we're just going to print out, the toString method for our car manager after we load it in, right? I'm fairly confident this is actually going to print out 5 things because we have 5 cars, but it won't print out the car information yet, and we'll see why in a second. But let's just make sure I'm right so far. Let's run it. There we go. Menu load. Let's choose our cars.txt file, open it. There you go. Actually, it only printed 2 things, 2 gas cars. Not sure why. I probably made a mistake. Well, let's see what mistake I made. All right, let's stop it. Where's my file? Here's my file. Let's save it. Oh, that's why it didn't work. Let's look at our car manager. We're going to see, does it say electric or does it say gas? I actually misspelled something here. I put electric. I'm missing a letter. See, that's why you test. So now let's run it. New load. Let's get to our txt file. There you go. And there you go. We have in our car manager, we have an electric car, gas car, electric car. So you should have heard me talk before about why you see things like this. This is what type it is, and this is actually the memory address where it lives in your computer memory. And it does that because Java doesn't inherently know how to print out an electric car. It doesn't inherently know how to print out a gas car. So what we have to do, we have to put a toString method here so that it understands how to print those out. toString. So let's do it like this. Let's say we print out the ID. What else do we have? This dot make model. Plus what we got, this dot color, not clone, color plus miles plus price. There we go. Now let's try to print it out and see. There we go. Go through all the rigmarole again. There we go. So now we're getting better, right? So we have this, right now we have the ID, make, model, color, miles, and price, which is what we have here. What we're missing though is it electric or is it gas? We're also missing, either the charge or the gallons, depending on what type it is. So, this does the toString for the car itself, but now if it's an electric car, it's a little bit more specialized. So we want to get the superstring, but also at the beginning, if it's an electric car, we're going to put electric plus the super.toString. That right there gives us the ID, make, model, miles, price. And then we're also going to put the charge. So that should work for our electric. So let's not do it for the gas yet. Let's just do it for the electric, and so we can see the difference. Let's run it. Menu load. Just 242 cars, and there you go. So for the electric, we have everything. Electric, the ID, make, model, color, miles, price, and charge. And as you can see, for the gas, we don't have it yet. We need to implement that. So just like we did for electric car, we need to do the same for the gas car. Except for, instead of saying electric, we're going to say gas. Instead of a charge, it's gallons, right? There we go. So now when we run it and we load the file, there we go. Now in our list is all the cars and all the information about the cars. All right, so now, so far we know our load function works. So that's how we can load our cars from a file. You need to load your media from a file, kind of in that same regard. All right, so let's go back here to where our car measure is. So the load from file is done. Let's go to add a car. So if we want to add a car to our list, what do we need to know? Well, we need to know what car to add. Easy enough. So as a parameter, we'll say add a car, and we'll give it the car to add. And then we'll just say our list of cars dot add this new car. Bam, easy peasy. That's all we need to do to add a new car. Done. This one starts to get a little bit more complicated. So find all cars. Okay. So for your assignment, you need to find all media by, I think it's title, right? If it contains the text that's in that title, right? For our find cars, we're just going to find it by the maker model. Okay. We're going to get a list of the cars that have the same make model, right? Which make model is Toyota, Ford, Chevy, Jeep, which one? It's going to be a parameter, make model. So now we need to find all the cars that have this make model. It is not just one car. It could be 0 cars. For example, if we look at our file, this is going to be our cars. Let's say we did a search for Toyota. If we did a search for Toyota, that's the only one, right? So it would just be one car. If we did a search for Jeep, well, there's 2 that have the make model Jeep. So you need to return 2 Jeeps. If you did a search for Suzuki, there are actually none of them are Suzuki. So you would still return a list, but the list would be empty. It wouldn't have anything in it. So this right here says you are returning a list. So this is going to be our list that we're going to return. Let's make a new list. Now we need to look through all of our cars. So for the car and the list of cars, this looks through our list of cars. Let's make a couple comments here. New list to return. Loop through all existing cars. Check if the car make model matches. So this car, we need to check its make model. Right now, we can't get access to its maker model. Why? Because it's marked as private. So let's make a method to get the maker model. Get make model. And it'll just return the make model. That way we can get it and inspect it here. So if the car get make model, if the car's maker model is equal to the parameter make model, then we're going to add it to our return list. And then at the end, we can return our list. That's all there is to find the cars. So to find the cars, it will return a list of cars. It takes this as a parameter. Which make model are we searching for? This is going to be the list that it ultimately returns. At the beginning, you make a new list, and right now it's empty. It doesn't have anything in it. So now we're going to loop through all of our existing cars. That's what this does. And now, if that car's make model is equal to the parameter make model, then we're going to add that car to our return list because the make models match. And it's going to go through all the cars. And at the end, it's going to return the list. So if it searches for a make model that does not exist, then this will never happen, right? Because it will never be equal to each other. And so it will never add a car to it. And so it'll still return a list, but the list will be empty. It won't have anything in it. And that's what we want. All right. So that's our find cars. That's all there is to find cars. Let's test it out to make sure it's working right. So let's go back here to our main. Let's go here to where we're doing the find. So instead of click find, let's just try to find cars. We'll say a list of this list is equal to our car manager dot find cars. Let's find all the Chevys. And then we're going to print them out. See in list system.out.println C. All right. So what we're doing here, we're going to say this list of cars is equal to the car manager's find cars. This is the make and model that we want to find. And then after we do that, we're going to print out all of the cars that found in that list whenever we click the find button. So let's run it. Remember, we need to load first. If we don't load, then we don't have any cars yet. So load. There, it's loaded. Now let's find, as you see there, it printed out this one Chevy. Is that right? Yeah, it is. We only have one Chevy in there. And it found it. It printed it out. Okay. Let's find Jeep. I think there was 2 Jeeps, right? Let's look at our list. There are 2 Jeeps. So this should print out the 2 Jeeps. Let's run it. Got to load them. There you go. Let's find. There you go. It found the 2 Jeeps and printed them out. What if it's something that we don't have? You know, whatever model that is, that's not a model. Let's do it. There, let's load it again. There we go. Let's find it. And there's nothing printed out, which is fine because this make model didn't match anything that we have. All right, so that's how we can find things. Now, you know, we're just doing some printouts. If you're actually doing it in a GUI, you probably want to, you know, show this in the GUI somehow. Let's show it in the GUI like this. So we're going to find the cars. If the list is empty, then we're going to show something. If it's not empty, we'll show something else. S equals blank. You'll see what I'm doing here in a second. C plus equals, excuse me, the S plus equals the C.to string plus a new line. And then we'll do a J option pane. I'll explain it here in a second. So I get typed in, no S. There we go, that's good enough. And then if it was an empty list, we'll do a J option pane, show message dialog, no cars found. There we go. All right, so let's first do it with, you know, this as the make model. That isn't one of our cars, so it's going to be blank, right? There are no cars. Let's run it. Menu, still got to load them. Here we go. And then find, you see no cars found because there were no cars with that make model. Okay. Now let's make it a Jeep and run it. Still got to load them. There you go. And then do find, and there you go. There's the 2 Jeeps, just like we expected. Let's make it a little more interactive. What is it? It's a J input dialog, J option pane dot show input dialog. Yep. Enter make model. String make model. You might guess what I'm doing here. This is going to let the user type in what make model they want. So here we're going to ask the user to type in the maker model, and then whatever they type in is what we're going to search for. Let's run this. Still got to load them, very first thing. There you go. Fine. Enter the maker model, fine. Let's find this. No cars found. Let's find a Ford. Oh, it found that one single Ford. And then let's find a Jeep. And it found those two Jeeps. Good to go. Our find works. This whole find with the GUI works. We know that this find cars works. All right. Sell car. And this is really the last thing we're going to cover because I think this is about the last thing for your assignment. So, how do we sell a car? Well, first of all, let's make one modification to our car. So with all these variables, we also want to have a Boolean that says, is it sold or not? Has it been sold? So with a new variable, we need to make a new parameter here, Boolean sold, and kind of save it. But if we, sold is equal to sold. But if we do it here in the base class, we also kind of got to do it in the subclasses. So for electric car, this also wants to know if it's sold or not. Kind of like that. An electric car, the gas car, very similar. Boolean sold. Sold there. Well, what does this also mess up? If we just try to compile it, it gives an error here when we're trying to make the electric car, when we're trying to make the gas car. Why? Because it's expecting another parameter that's if it's been sold or not, if it's true or false, if it's been sold. Let's go back to our thing. So this needs to have another parameter in here if it's sold or not. So remember, all of these here are for the car. And then this was for the electric car. All of this here was for the car. And this is the gas car. Let's keep them all together. And in here, we'll put false for everything, meaning it has not been sold yet. So now we have, if it's electric or gas, the ID, the make model, the color, the miles, the price, the price, if it has been sold or not, true or false if it's been sold. Right now it's all false. And then for electric, you still have the charge, and for gas, you have the gallons. So those tokens are going to change a little bit. Let's have our file down here. So token 0 is still if it's gas or electric. Then we have ID is 1, that's fine. The only new thing we implemented is this false, which is now token 5, right? Because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry. That's token 6 is if it's true or false, if it's sold or not. So that's going to be a Boolean, parse Boolean. That's now token 6, which means it bumps this one to a token 7. It is now the 7th one for gas car, the gallons. Let's count it. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So that's right. And kind of the same thing here for electric car. We're now going to parse out if it's sold or not. 7, 6, 7, that's right. Let's update the car, the two strings, so that also with the miles and the price, we're also going to print if it's sold or not. All right, let's run this. There we go. Let's load it. There we go. And now let's find the Jeeps. Jeep. And it did find them. And as you can see, it now has the true or false in there if it's been sold or not. Okay. But now we want to be able to sell a car. Right now it just says click sell, but we need to be able to sell a car. All right. So let's think about how we need to do that. And there's the sell. So what we're going to do for sell, we're going to use the ID. We're going to sell a car by an ID. If we look at our cars, they all have unique IDs. This one's ABC, QWE, WAR, ERT, and RTY. Those are the IDs. So when we sell a car, we need to tell it what is the ID of the car we want to sell. So let's have the user type in what ID they want to sell. So this will be a J option pane input dialog. Enter ID to sell. That'll be the ID. And now with content, with the car manager, we need to sell a car. What car do we want to sell? The car with this ID. So when we look at our car manager, when we look at selling the car, we need to sell the car with this ID. So first of all, we need to find the car with that ID, right? So let's find car with the given ID. So let's loop through all the cars, car in our list of cars. If the car we need to get the car ID. If the car.id, we can't get it yet because the ID is private. So just like we did with the make model, let's make a function that gets the ID. So this gets the car ID for us. See how we're adding functions as we need them, just like I said at the beginning. So if the car's ID is equal to the parameter ID, we found the car to sell. So let's sell the car. Well, the car doesn't have any sell function, right? But how do we know if a car is sold or not? We know if a car is sold or not from this variable right here, either true or false, it's sold or not. So let's just make a new method, set the sold variable to true or false. So now we can control if that car is marked sold or not, right? If we do set sold with true, it means that the car is sold. If we do set sold with false, it means the car is not sold. So when we loop through all the cars, if we find the car that has a matching ID to the parameter, then we're going to set it to sold. But there might be a problem here. You don't want to sell the same car twice. Well, actually, you can't sell the same car twice. Your program will let you sell the same car twice, right? But we shouldn't be selling the same car twice, right? So first we need to check if the car is already sold. So first we need to check if car already sold. So if the car is sold, so we need to be able to get the sold as well. We need to know if it has been sold. Just have a method get sold and it just returns if it's sold or not. That's a car manager. So if the sold is true, can't sell the same car twice. Else, we want to sell it. One more change we'll make to this method is, in your assignment, if you rent a media, you need to tell the user how much the cost was. So if we sell a car, we want to tell the user what the price was, right? So right here, we're looking through the cars, we find the matching ID. If the car is already sold, then let's just return 0. And 0 is going to kind of be an indicator to us that we couldn't sell the car, it was already sold. And if we sell the car, if the car is not already sold, we want to mark it as sold. And then we want to return to the user what the price of the car was. So we'll get the price. Get price doesn't exist yet, but let's make it. Float get price. It'll just return the price of the car. And there you go. That's all there is to the sell the car. What we have to look out for, though, is, oops, if we go through all these cars, if none of the IDs match, then it'll never do this, and it gets to the end. No matching ID. Oh no, what do we do? Well, we can only return a float. So let's just know for ourselves, if we return a -1, then that means there was no car with that ID. So let's look at what we're doing. If it returns 0, it means that car has already been sold. And this is just up to us to make it up however we want to do it. You can do something different. It doesn't matter as long as it works correctly. But for me, I'm going to say, if I'm going to return 0 if that car is already sold. I'm going to return the car, return the price of the car if it's successful. And then if I return -1, it means there wasn't even a car that even existed with that ID. So let's go back here to our main and let's do it. So let's get the ID from the user. We're going to sell the car. And the price is whatever it returns, right? But if the price is equal to -1, no such car. Else, if the price is equal to 0, car already sold. Otherwise, sold for the price. So let's show the user. Option pane, show message dialog. No such car exists. Change this message to that car is already sold. And if this one, and if we actually sell it, you bought the car for whatever that price is. Let's run this and test it and see if it works. Run it. All right, let's load our cars. All right. Let's show that file at the same time so we know what cars exist and which don't. Where is it at? Did I lose it? Oh, there it is. All right, yeah. All right, there's our thing. Here's all the cars we have, and we already loaded it. So let's sell, let's say ABC. We're going to sell this Toyota. All right, click OK. It says we bought the car for 2323.23. Sure enough, that's the price of the car. And let's make sure it's marked as sold now. If we go and find, was that a Toyota? If we find the Toyota, we can see it's now true that it's been sold, right? Let's show that example again with the Ford. First, let's find the Ford. Here's the Ford. Right now it's false. It has not been sold. Let's sell it. The ID for the Ford is QWE. Okay. You bought the car for 34.34, and that was the price of the Ford. Let's find the Ford. You see it is now marked as sold. It's true. All right. Let's do one. Let's try to sell the Ford again. QWE. The Ford is already sold. If we try to sell it again, well, actually, it says no cars found. Is that what it's supposed to say? Find Ford. There's the Ford. It's QWE. It's true. Maybe I messed up something somewhere. Sell QWE. There you go. I must have just typed in the wrong thing at first. It says that car is already sold. The Ford's already sold. Let's try to sell this Toyota again. The Toyota has already been sold. Let's try to sell it again. Oh, the car has already been sold. Let's try to sell something that does not exist. That car does not exist. Okay. No such car exists. It won't let me sell it. But now I can sell, say, this Jeep with that ID, ERT. And you bought the car for $67.67. Sure enough, that Jeep is bought. And now when we do a find on Jeep, remember it's going to list two Jeeps because we have two Jeeps. One is sold and one is not, right? So that cell works. All right. That is probably like 95% of what you have to do for your assignment. The only other thing you have to do for your assignment, really, other than what I've covered, is, after I sell one of the cars, all right, let's look at this. So let's look at the Jeeps again, right? If we look at Jeep, we have these two Jeeps. One is sold and one is not sold, right? One is true and one is false. Okay. Let's close the program. Let's run it again. What's going to happen? Let's load them in. Let's look at our Jeeps. And right now they're both false. They both say they have not been sold. Why is that? That's because we closed the program and we started the program again. So the last time we ran the program, we loaded the file, and then we in memory, we changed that the Jeep was sold, right? But then we closed the program. When we closed the program, anything that we did to those cars in memory is gone. All of that is gone. Anything in memory is gone. So now when we run the program a second time and we load the file again, it only loads what is in the file. And the file says they're all not sold. They're all false. So what do we need to do so that if I close the program and then the next time I open it, it's correct if it is sold or not? It remembers what happened last time. Well, the only way to do that is to write it to a file. So we have this file here that it loads from. So what you have to do is whenever you sell a car, you need to make sure you update this file. So if I go in here and I sell the Jeep, I need to write in this file that the Jeep has been sold, so that whenever I close the program and I open it back up again, let's kind of simulate that. Let's close the program. And now, if we did the right thing, whenever we sold this Jeep, we changed this to a true. We're just doing it manually right here. You have to make sure your program does this when you sell a Jeep. But let's say I'm simulating like I made that code. So it changed this Jeep to sold to true. Now, the next time I run the program, see, load it in my file. Now, when I look at my Jeeps, yeah, there. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. False, false, false. I probably have a bug somewhere. Let's make sure I got this file saved. Let's close the program. And let's make sure my file is saved. Saving file. Okay. Let's run it. That's embarrassing if this doesn't work right. There we go. Now let's find my Jeep. Please. False, false. Oh, I have a bug somewhere. I'm going to try to find this bug real fast, real quick. If I don't, well, just know I have a bug, and you need to, whenever you're doing yours, you have to find what the bug is. 4, 5, Boolean part. I think it's parse Boolean, actually. Oh, yeah, that's the difference. I had get Boolean instead of parse Boolean. Parse Boolean is the correct one. So now when I run it, should have been it. File load. There we go. Now let's find our Jeeps. So I had a bug in the program and I corrected the bug. There you go. So this Jeep is marked as sold. True, false. I can't sell it again. That's good. So what you have to do, and I'm going to leave it up to you, whenever you sell a car, or in your assignment, whenever you rent a media, you need to make sure the file is updated. So where is our cell? Go here. Enter make model. That's the fine. Here's the cell. Notice this car already sold. So when we successfully sold the car, to do, we need to update the file. And that's for you to figure out. I can't give you all the answers. I can give you some assistance if you run into problems, if you email me. But that's where I'm going to leave you. Okay. That is a very large chunk of what you need to do for your assignment. Our example was all about cars. You need to look at this, comprehend it, what's going on, rewatch the video several times if you need to, and you need to make it about media and renting media and titles and ebooks and music and movies and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that's listed in your assignment. Okay. One more reiteration of some information, and I'll let you ask questions. So again, this course ends on Tuesday. Let me get the date. On Tuesday, August 9th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I cannot accept this assignment after that day or time. I cannot accept any past late assignments after that date or time. Okay? I cannot make that clear enough. August 9th, which is a Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anything that you wish to have graded as part of this course needs to be submitted on the course website. Okay. Again, you can ask me any question you want via email. I usually am pretty quick to respond to it. However, if you email me in the middle of the night, it's unlikely I'm going to get back to you before the next day. So if you're waiting down to the wire, if you ask me a question on Tuesday night at 10 p.m., it's very, very unlikely that you will get a response before the course ends. So working on this early, asking me questions early and often is the preferred method that you should be following. All right, I'll go ahead and open this up for a couple minutes if there are any questions. So go ahead if you have a question. Nothing heard yet. I'll stand by about 1 minute. After that, we'll wrap it up. Standing by 1 additional minute.
Good afternoon, Professor.
Hey, go ahead.
So I had a question about my GUI assignment. Like, I'm the one who emailed you about it, and I still have trouble. I fixed it like you told me and everything, but then it's just like saying something like, 1 second, I'm sorry. It literally saying like nothing to display on the console. So I have problem regarding that. That's my biggest problem right now.
Okay.
And I don't know about it.
Yeah, email me your change file because I remember your file from last time. Email me your change file here in the next few minutes, and I'll make sure I get a response back to you here shortly via email once I can look at your specific code.
Copy. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Everybody have a good rest of your evening. Like I said, if you have any issues or any additional questions, feel free to email me at any time, and if I'm awake at my computer, I'll usually respond immediately. If not, I'll get back to it, as soon as I can. All right. Have a good night.